Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Tuesday, the 23rd of June, comes to you from London. And market sentiment being positive continues. We see a sea of green this morning. Looking at the dollar first of all, the dollar index just turning bearish on that short-term chart. So the run that we saw in the dollar just running out of steam, basically. Long term, still have high hopes here because we've got big upside targets and an uptrend. But for the moment, the short term is just turning bearish. And that means the euro is now just moving into bullish mode, bullish above the cloud. And the long-term recovery not quite in train yet. We need to break really above that level of 115 that we saw earlier in the year. And if we look at the yen, we're sitting at that 107 level still. And the dollar is actually looking a little bit stronger there. Against sterling, the dollar is also looking a bit. We see sterling now worth more dollars, so sterling is actually improving relative to that weak dollar, but not quite into bullish territory yet, and still in a long-term downtrend with some very big downside targets, which hang over us and will do for quite some time. Euro sterling, we're seeing at 110.60, so it's still bearish on the medium and long-term charts and the short-term. So sterling's still suffering. And if we look at against the Swiss franc, we're just nudging below that 118 level this morning, and against the Aussie sitting at 180. So we see that steady trend in the Aussie dollar up, sterling down against the dollar. Bitcoin sitting at 9,600, had a big jump yesterday, but that's not continued today. We are still in long-term bullish territory and medium-term, and the short-term is now looking better, but we do have some downside targets hanging over us. Here we see the bigger targets of the long term. Bitcoin could go either way still. Looking at the S&P 500 index, it did actually close down yesterday, just struggling a little bit here. And interestingly, this morning for one of my posts, I was looking at how we saw the recoveries previously, and just this is the dot-com and the financial crisis, and we can see here that we did have took a long time for recovery. So it is just worth remembering that recoveries do take time. Looking at the Nasdaq, this has been making new all-time highs. So this is more than just a recovery. This is breaking out. And so a lot of the recovery that we have seen in stocks is tech-driven, of course, and no clear signs of a downtrend here. The Dow was up 0.6%, driven again by tech. And if we look at the futures today, we see we're up 0.2% on the S&P future, and on the Nasdaq E-mini up nearly 0.6%. So again, looking like we will open higher in the markets. The FTSE future up 0.8% this morning, and the DAX is up a massive 2.3%. So a real re-rating there. That's really pushing higher despite the wirecard crisis. And the FTSE, we see the UK markets is up 1%. The DAX, as we said, up 2.3%, so really big moves there. CAC Current up 1.7%, not quite as big. And if we look in Japan, we're up 0.5% overnight. The Hang Seng was up 1.6%. So that's looking stronger, and China was up slightly as well. And the Indian market, the Sensex, was up over 1%, and now we're into medium-term bullish territory. We're starting to see real runs in this market, and of course on the longer term, we're seeing targets 26% higher. Does look like we will make a new high in Indian stocks. This is the 1% log scale chart. Again, lots of upside targets. So the recovery in India looking pretty well underway and certain. The Aussie market was a little bit less buoyant, but it was slightly up overnight. And if we look at gold, gold is nudging. Yesterday it was making new 6-year highs. Lots of upside targets. Bullish on all 3 time frames. Gold still bullish. Not much change in US bond yields. Looking at the energy mix, we've got Brent crude. It's looking stronger this morning. We're at 43.30, making new highs on the 60-minute chart, and lots of upside targets here. Not terribly exciting. We've got upside targets to the mid 44, 44.50, 44.80, so it does look like we'll just continue to push higher this week. And WTI, much the same picture. We were bullish on our call yesterday for this, and we're looking stronger there. US nat gas sitting in the mid 160s, just struggling really to recover, and we've seen this 160 support level. We do have a target here to 155, and it's a very scary target if we make new lows. Looking at coal, we're sitting at 55.20. We're looking like we're close to making a transition to bullish on coal. Emissions, of course, have been in that mode, and we're up a further 2% this morning. 25.50, 25.45, that's the next target area. That looks like where we're going. So looking strong there. UK gas up 6% this morning. We're bullish on that this week as well. And TTF, Dutch gas, up nearly 5%. And not quite enough to break to new highs, not looking quite as bullish as MBP, but it does look like we are making a transition here as well. And if we look at German power, we're up 1%. We're back above that 40 euro level and back into a long-term uptrend. So it's looking very good for German power. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.